So this is my first time reading a novel by Anthony Horowitz, and I've got some thoughts to share. Welcome back, Book Dragons. I'm so glad you've joined me today. I recently read The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. This is the first book in the Susan Ryland mystery series. It's the first time that I've read anything by Anthony Horowitz, but I'd heard some good reviews of it. I've known people who have said they enjoyed it, and so I decided I would give it a try. I did an entire month of mysteries in March, with the exception of one book that was not mystery, and this was one of those books. So I'm here to tell you as much about it as I possibly can without spoiling anything. This book is pretty unique. It reminded me of The Princess Bride. Now, I have not read the Princess Bride book yet. I've only seen the movie several times. If you've seen The Princess Bride or read the book, you know that there is a grandfather reading a book to his grandson, and the majority of the time we spend is in the story itself, but on occasion we get glimpses in the real world of the grandfather talking to his grandson and talking about things in the book. The reason I say this is similar is because there is a frame narrative, just like there was in The Princess Bride, and in this frame narrative, we've got Susan Ryland, who is a editor for a smaller publishing company, and she has recently received the manuscript for the latest book from one of their more popular authors, named Alan Conway. He's the author of the Atticus Pund series, and Atticus Pund is written in a very similar way to Hercule Poirot from Agatha Christie. In fact, there are some places in the book that are very meta when it comes to that similarity. It's really kind of funny because they kind of poke fun at it. Anyway, Alan Conway has brought in his latest book, and Susan Ryland has been given the task of reading through the book and doing the editing and things like that. And I was honestly taken a little bit off guard by that, because I was expecting it to be just a straightforward front-to-back mystery. I was not expecting the frame narrative. But the frame narrative is done well, I think, for the most part. I got used to it after a while, and it was fine. And I would say probably at least 60% of the book is spent in this book called The Magpie Murders. Yes, that's right. This book that I just read, The Magpie Murders, is about a book called The Magpie Murders. Are you confused yet? Anyway, we start following along in this new book written about the adventures of Atticus Pund, and he's got his trusty sidekick, just like Poirot has his sidekick in Hastings. And Atticus Pund gets hired by a mysterious young woman to look into the mysterious death of her soon-to-be mother-in-law. And then the mystery just sets off on foot from there. At some point in the book, it jumps back to the present day, and we start getting Susan Ryland's perspective on the book she's reading, and things that she's picking out about the book that don't make sense to her, or that she's confused about, or this cliffhanger that she's just read. And at some point she realizes the book is incomplete. And so now she has to track down the rest of the manuscript, and along the way she gets caught up in a real-life murder mystery of her own. So it's just this weird combination of fiction and reality in a fiction book. It's kind of like when you watch those movies where they have animated characters along with live-action characters, kind of meshing the two together. That's kind of what this feels like in a way. It feels like fiction and reality have been meshed together in this weird combination. So essentially the way the book is constructed is you've got it starting off with Susan Ryland, then the Atticus Pund mystery, then back to Susan Ryland, and then finishing off the book with mostly Atticus Pund, but then some Susan Ryland at the end. It's definitely got a structure to it, but at one point I just felt kind of jolted out of the story because this quick change in perspectives from the fiction book to the real life part of the book. And that left me a little bit confused, and I think Anthony Horowitz may have intended some confusion. So that's fine. It was all part of the experience, all part of the adventure. As I mentioned, we mainly have three main characters: Susan Ryland, Alan Conway, and the fictional character Atticus Pund, although there are other characters as well that play into the picture. Alan Conway's boyfriend pops up at one point in the story and becomes a fairly major character. And then, of course, you've got the editor-in-chief of the publishing firm, who becomes a main character in the story as well. And there's other side characters that come to prominence, both from the real world and the fictional world. I know that sounds strange, but you're just going to have to bear with me on that. So those are the characters. I've already kind of talked a little bit about what I didn't like. A lot of the time I spent in the world of the Magpie Murders book that this book is about, and learning about Atticus Pund and his methods and the way he approaches a mystery. That whole time I was reading that, I'm just constantly saying, oh wow, that's totally Poirot. That's, that Atticus Pund is German, but other than his nationality, he was almost a carbon copy of Poirot. And I remember thinking as I read along, I'm like, this is pretty bad if he is this similar to Poirot. But then I get to the point in the story where I realize, oh, that was intentional. So that got better. But I think the way this was formatted made it hard to get a grip on the story as a whole. But what I did like is when I got to the end of the book and realized how everything fit together perfectly, like this giant puzzle that Anthony Horowitz had been assembling this whole time. I got to the end and I'm like, that was actually pretty well done. I am impressed with the way he pulled that off, because the way it was written made it hard to imagine all the loose ends being tied up. So I was really impressed at how well he tied up the loose ends. I really did like the characters overall, especially Susan Ryland. She was just a fantastic character. I really enjoyed getting to know her and also getting to know Alan Conway. He's a very unique individual, very different. And sometimes he comes across very jaded and angry when you encounter him in the book. And then later on you find out some of the reasons why he's so jaded and angry. Alan Conway was really written quite well. I was impressed. Even though the plot seemed like it was a little wonky, everything was smoothed out by the end of the book, and so that kind of progress really impresses me. So that's definitely something I liked. I also really like that it was written in such a way that it doesn't go over the head of the reader. Sometimes books can be written with such wordy and flowery language or really, really big words that it might turn off certain people that are reading it. I don't mind books like that, but some people do, I think. I felt like this was written in a way that any type of reader can come to the book and enjoy it. It's a pretty quick and engaging read. It's not a super long book, and so that was really good for me. It didn't drag at all. So you're probably wondering what my rank is. I would put this in my shiny tier, guys. It wasn't one of the best mysteries I've ever read. It definitely wasn't the worst. It was just kind of right there in the middle. It was good. It wasn't great. I will probably read the second book. I think it's a duology, at least. I know there's at least one other book in the Susan Ryland mysteries. So I will probably read it at some point, but I'm not jumping on a jet ski to go to the location where the next book is, if that makes sense. It's not high on my priority list, but I will probably read it eventually. So I would like to know, have you read The Magpie Murders? Is it new to you? If you have read the book, I would love to know your thoughts about it. Let me know in the comments below. If you have not read the book, let me know if this has kind of sparked your interest for the book. And until next time, guys, make sure you're reading more books, and I will see you very soon.